nitrogen cycle is the circulation of nitrogen in various forms through nature. But first, nitrogen is a component of proteins and nucleic acids and is very essential to life.
Atmospheric nitrogen is extremely important for the proper functioning of cells. The main reason for that is that proteins are made up of amino acids, which are in turn made up of nitrogen molecules. Also, many other compounds important for the cell are made up of nitrogen. So are we saying that nitrogen is required by all organisms? Of course, yes. But we can't really breathe nitrogen from the air. So this problem will be fixed by the plants for us. Yes, they will synthesize compounds having nitrogen. And when we consume plants, the nitrogen will enter to our body. Simple, isn't it? Actually not. Problem of nitrogen consumption by animals got solved. But what about the problem of nitrogen consumption by plants? Nitrogen is present in abundance in the atmosphere. However, the divalent molecule has a very strong triple bond shed between its atoms, and it is very difficult to break this bond. It requires extremely high amounts of energy. One instance occurring naturally is called the lightning process, which helps break the two atoms apart, but that doesn't always help. So the problem still exists. Even plants cannot take nitrogen directly from the air. So who will solve this problem? We don't need to worry. Plants also seek the help of some other organisms, called the microorganisms. Yes, several bacteria and blue-green algae are part of this activity. This important process is referred to as nitrogen fixation. What do we exactly mean by this? The term fixation refers to converting an element into usable form. So are we saying that these organisms convert nitrogen into utilizable forms? Absolutely. These organisms are referred to as nitrogen-fixing organisms. The nitrogen fixers present in soil convert the atmospheric nitrogen molecules into compounds like nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia. These compounds are taken up by the roots of the plants, and then the plants use these compounds to synthesize their own proteins. Consumption of these plants and humans then gets the nitrogen into the animal kingdom. This is how the process of nitrogen fixation occurs. Let me quickly recap what we learned, okay? Humans need nitrogen, right? But they can't take it directly from the atmosphere. Hence, to get it from the plants. But even plants can take it directly from the atmosphere. This is where the nitrogen fixing organisms come into the picture. They convert atmospheric nitrogen into consumable compounds for the plants. And then animals consume the plants to get this nitrogen. But wait! If all the nitrogen in the atmosphere is gradually fixed by these microbes and used by plants and us, then it would deplete, right? What if it gets entirely depleted? What will happen next? How will organisms survive? Guess what? Nature, as always, holds a secret solution to this, and that secret is the nitrogen cycle. Yes, the nitrogen cycle in the atmosphere is brought back into the biological world where it is utilized, but it is also sent back to the atmosphere by some means. This process of cyclic flow of nitrogen from the atmosphere to the living world and back to the atmosphere is called as the nitrogen cycle. But how does this cycle actually flow? Let's have a look, shall we? As we know, the atmospheric nitrogen is fixed into two major ways. Firstly, by the rhizobium bacteria in root nodules of leguminous plants, and secondly, by nitrogen-fixing bacteria and blue-green algae in the soil. The first type involves in fixing off nitrogen exclusively for legumes. The roots of these plants have nodules that are small, bead-like structures. These nodules are the homes of these nitrogen-fixing bacteria, called the rhizobium. The roots can thus directly get benefited due to the activity of these bacteria. But what about the non-leguminous plants? We don't need to worry. We have the second method. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria and blue-green algae in the soil help in converting the atmospheric nitrogen into usable compounds. These compounds will be absorbed by the plants and utilized further. Now when animals consume these plants, the nitrogen enters to their bodies. Now, can the nitrogen get back to the atmosphere from here? Definitely not by breathing. Let me give you a hint. Have you ever come across the process of decomposition? Yes, that's the answer to the question. When these organisms die, their bodies get buried in the soil. There, the decomposers are also set into the action. The decomposers help to break down the viviparous compounds containing nitrogen. So what will be the result? Yes, it will result in releasing the nitrogen trapped inside the organism's body back into the soil. Amazing, isn't it? But wait, you see something more interesting. The soil is another category of bacteria called the denitrifying bacteria. What could they be useful for? As the name says, they will help release the nitrogen molecules from these compounds present in the soil into the atmosphere. Yes, these denitrifying bacteria sometimes convert the available nitrogen-containing compounds from the soil to release molecular nitrogen. That means they don't really wait for the decomposers to complete the process.
Microbes generate at least half of the oxygen we breathe. But in 1885, the Dutch microbiologist Martinus Beijerinck discovered another critical function they performed: fixing nitrogen.
Nitrogen-fixing bacteria are absolutely essential for life because they fix nitrogen, one of the key elements, one of the key building blocks of all of our cells and all of our biochemistry. All animals and plants on the earth depend upon it, but also human beings. The only way that we can get nitrogen is through the food that we eat that was originally fixed by the bacteria.
Nitrogen enters the food chain as a result of microbes taking it from the air and converting it into more accessible compounds such as ammonia, which plants can then take up.
These nitrogen-fixing bacteria often live in the roots of legumes like bean plants. And the bean plants are very clever. They send out hairs from their roots that attract these bacteria in. And the bacteria essentially take up residence in the roots of these plants.
These bacteria are incorporated into root nodules. And in these special protective houses, bacteria work anaerobically to fix nitrogen into ammonia using a special enzyme called nitrogenase, which combines hydrogen and nitrogen.
In 1909, the German Fritz Haber discovered how to fix nitrogen chemically to create ammonia, leading to the production of inorganic fertilizers on an industrial scale. 1/3 of the world's population is now sustained by crops grown using artificial fertilizers. But inorganic fertilizers can be bad for the environment.
Plants that contain nitrogen-fixing bacteria can often grow in much poorer soils than other plants, so they're extremely useful for farmers. The farmers can grow the nitrogen-fixing plants, the bacteria will fix the nitrogen, and then they can come along with a plough and churn those plants into the soil and thereby enrich the soil with nitrogen. And this is one way in which nitrogen-fixing bacteria are so essential for our agriculture.